I'm sure that everybody recently has seen a rise in opinions and statements about the art style of Team Fortress 2. This video is going to be talking primarily about items in regards to cosmetics. We're not going to be talking about maps today. I would like to, but I'm going to save that for another time. For the past few years, I would say, there have been particular members in the community who have contributed to this strong opinion about what the art style of Team Fortress 2 is supposed to be, or what it should be, or what it is factually. The premise of this video is we are not the ones who get to decide what Team Fortress 2 is. That is up to Valve. You will not find any community member who has the power to add an item to Team Fortress 2. That choice is solely up to Valve. Now, that's not to say that those decisions aren't influenced by choices of the community. What you vote for on the Steam Workshop absolutely does contribute to Valve's ultimate decision when an update comes around. But it has seemed like in recent years, there have been a lot of complaints about what Valve has chosen, which to me, I find personally strange. I have been playing Team Fortress 2 for 13 years now. I am not an authority figure over anything because of my length of playtime or how many hours I put into the game or how much experience I have with it. I would just like to say that, I have been here for a long time and I've seen a lot of the changes. The very first update that I ever experienced was the Man vs. Machine update, so I've been around pretty much since then, and I can say that personally I have never seen such a strong sense of purity about what Team Fortress 2 is. Now, I'm not going to name particular people, but I'm sure you can assume who I'm talking about when I say that there are particular members of the community who have contributed to this. I can completely understand the feeling that cosmetics or items in general have been straying away from Valve's original intention with Team Fortress 2. To those people, I would just say that you're right, it definitely has strayed from Valve's original intention, but I think it's worth noting that Valve themselves has strayed away from that intention with their own items and their own collaborations. Team Fortress 2, at its core, is a game that takes place in 1960s America. It's not authentic to human history, obviously, since there's incredibly advanced technology in TF2 that does not exist in real life. And if you're at all familiar with the comics, you're probably aware of how Australia is depicted. Some of the items that I see being brought up, particularly older items, such as the Oculus item and the bionic arm from the Deus Ex collaboration. People will point those out as being particularly egregious items, but I would say, considering what we know about the TF2 universe and the technology that exists in it, I don't personally consider these items to be all that problematic. They may stray away a little bit from the appearances of other items, particularly if you compare the bionic arm to the gunslinger. There's an argument to be made that they look very different from each other. You could also say that the gunslinger is designed by the engineer and he has a particularly personal art style that he uses when he designs his buildings. You could argue that the bionic arm just comes from somewhere else. There's arguments to be made both ways about what does and doesn't belong in TF2. While we're on the topic of the Deus Ex collaboration, that promotional update came with more than just cosmetics. It also came with weapons. That includes the Short Circuit, the Widowmaker, and the Machina. I have personally never seen anybody complain about those weapons. Never seen anybody mention how their appearance didn't fit within the universe of TF2. But I do suspect that if these weapons were added today instead of all those years ago, I think they actually would have caused quite a controversy, which is interesting to think about because they've been here for so long, and I don't know if it's because people have accepted it or people just don't look back on it, but it really goes to show how people weren't really complaining about this type of stuff back in the day. People didn't really mind when TF2 strayed away from its base art style, its base time period, its base technology. People didn't really mind it back then. So it's interesting to see this change in mentality today against what it was so many years ago. Another interesting collaboration was the Gourdbort weapons. Now, not all of the Gourdbort weapons got added into the game. For what reason, I can't quite remember why. But of the ones that did get added, including the Cow Mangler, the Pomson, and the Righteous Bison, these weapons definitely don't fit TF2's base art style. Now, you could make an argument that the Gourdbort weapons are thematically representative of the 1960s, since they are very retro-futuristic, which was very popular back in that time during American history. But just because that particular art style was popular in the 1960s doesn't mean that those things actually existed, nor that they would actually belong in something that was intending to be an accurate portrayal of 1960s America, which again, Team Fortress 2 is not. Personally, from what I have experienced with this game, I would say that cosmetics in recent years have not really strayed away far from what we're used to. I think a pretty good example, an item that I think if it were added today would probably be quite controversial, but because it was added so many years ago, I don't think people ever really mention it, but the cosmetics featured in the Shogun collaboration, and the weapons as well to an extent, are as far away from 1960s America as you could get. I mean, they're items themed after feudal Japan, which is a completely different time in history and a completely different place on the planet. It's about, like I said, as far away as you can get. But either because they're promotional items or because they were added so long ago, people just don't really mention those ones. I don't know which items in particular caused this heightened sense in art style purity. I know a famous one that has been mentioned is the potassium bonnet, or the banana hat. There is a case to be made that the banana hat doesn't belong. But personally, I really like the banana hat. I think it fits. TF2 is a very silly game. I don't personally understand how someone can, read the comics and read the blog posts, play the game and hear the dialogue of the characters and see TF2 as something that should be taken so seriously. I don't think that TF2 has ever taken itself so seriously. It kind of thrives on being this thing that is silly and different. That's what really separated it from most other games of its time. On that aspect, TF2 is not the only game that I would say has a player base that is struggling with art style. A good other example that's relating to what I just talked about would be Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty in recent years has definitely strayed away from its art style. It's a game that has historically been appealing because of its realistic graphics and portrayal of the military and war. And in recent years, it has been plagued by questionable collaborations, whether it be with celebrities or TV shows, or even in recent times, cartoons. But the difference between TF2 and Call of Duty, like I said, is that TF2 has thrived on being a silly game. It's thrived on being different and not taking itself seriously. Call of Duty is the exact opposite. It thrives on being that realistic depiction. Like I said, that's what draws people into it, is they crave that realism in the gameplay and in the graphics. If you were to ask me, I would say that the banana hat is really not that bad. But again, this is my opinion. I'm not trying to be an authority figure over the game. I'm just offering a different perspective and a different take on this because as someone that has played this game for so many years, I have just never seen such opinions. I think that a lot of it has definitely been driven by particular members in the community. For what reason, I don't know. Personally, when I don't like an item, I just don't vote for it. I don't click yes on everything that I see in the workshop. I definitely have my preferences, but those are my preferences. I don't think that TF2 should be solely restricted to 1960s America or solely be restricted to items that necessarily fit the personalities of the characters. I think that the whole point of cosmetics is that you get to customize your character and you get to make them represent you a little. you get to dress them up the way that you want. Obviously, if we were to really take this seriously, I don't really think many of the mercenaries would wear anything different than what they do in their default appearance. Short from gear or the scout having a different type of baseball hat, I really don't think that they would dress all that differently. And yet I don't see people complain when the medic gets a barbershop cosmetic, or when the heavy is dressed like a college campus sports player. I just don't see things like that. I think that a lot of people have become very picky and choosy about it, and it does kind of upset me. TF2 is a masterpiece in many ways. It is a true work of art in its design, and that has remained pretty consistent. My opinions on the art style lie less with cosmetics and more with things like war paints and unusual effects and such like that. But I would never take the position to say that I don't think those things belong in TF2, or that they ruin the game or the experience. My experience of TF2 has remained largely the same since I started playing. I still have quite a lot of fun with it. I don't really get all that upset when I see a spy with the alien mask. It doesn't really bother me. I don't get upset when I see someone with an unusual effect, or when I see someone with a skin on their shotgun that makes it look like the reserve shooter a little bit. It doesn't really grind my gears all that much, but what does grind my gears is people taking this purity stance. And I don't want to invalidate those people's opinions on the game. I know that TF2 is a game that means so much to so many people, and obviously people are going to have strong opinions about it because of that. But if I were to make just one suggestion to those people, and if you are one of those people, please take this to heart. Please do not go out of your way to harass the people who submit these items to the workshop that you don't like. Just vote no. The reason that these items get into the game is because Valve adds them, and largely the reason that Valve will add an item is because it gets good reviews, because people say yes. That tells me that the majority of people probably don't mind these cosmetics all that much. It's mostly just a vocal minority, but I see it so much these days, and I would much rather get this opinion out so that people can see it and maybe look at it from a different light. I know that there's been talk about controversies relating to members of the workshop community. I have known about this for several years now. Trust me, I'm well aware of it. But I do believe that topic is completely separate from this conversation. We're only here to talk about art style. We're not here to talk about drama or specific members of the community. We're just here to talk about the art style. Workshoppers, their job is, well, I say job, but really this is a hobby. They do these things for fun. Their job is just to make cosmetics that they think would be cool. And ultimately it's their opinion. And when they put things out onto the workshop, they may not know if people will like it or not. All of this goes to show that even though Team Fortress 2 was originally designed around 1960s America, again, take a shot every time I say 1960s America in this video, even though it was originally designed to emulate that aesthetic, Valve themselves has never really tried to stick with that, and I don't believe that was ever really their intention. They definitely slow burned into different aesthetics when added into the game. The first cosmetics that they added were very simple and very related to the characters that wore them. Same goes for the weapons. They were always very thematically TF2. But what is thematically TF2 has changed over the years, and that has been driven by Valve. It has been driven by their collaborators. It has been driven by their contributors. It's been driven by everybody who plays and supports this game. That's what makes it so special. And that trend has only continued today. I'm not going to say that every item that ends up on the Steam Workshop is perfect or is ripe for addition, but I definitely think that this problem is far too overblown. At the end of the day, we have to remember that this is just a video game, and I'm not saying that to infer that anything goes and that anything can happen and that it's acceptable, or that Valve could just add any low poly, low effort model into the game and that it would thematically fit or that it would be right. That's not what I'm saying. I do believe that most of what is added to the workshop is pretty well done, well modeled, well textured, and doesn't look very out of place in TF2, especially in comparison to the other items that I mentioned previously in the video. So all of that to say, workshoppers are not your enemy. Don't go writing hate comments on every workshop submission that doesn't pique your interest. When I first saw Death of an Art Style, I definitely agreed with it a little bit, that some of the cosmetics were maybe pushing it too far, unusual effects were a bit nonsensical. And I do agree with the option that maybe there should be a way to disable some of these things, similar to the way that you can disable sprays and conscientious objector signs, if not for performance, for personal preference. I think we really need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of this game as a whole, how it has grown over all of these years and how it will continue to grow, hopefully for many more years to come. And we need to ask ourselves, how can we support that growth? How can we keep this train going? I think that the best way to do that is to keep nurturing creativity in the way that we always have in this community. To always be open to new ideas and new ways that the game can change, because that's exactly what's going to keep Team Fortress 2 living for another 20 years, hopefully. If you have any thoughts about this, please mention it in the comments or add me on Steam and send me a message and we can talk about it. I want the conversation to remain open about this topic, and I want to make sure that this stays peaceful and productive. So again, no sending hate comments to workshoppers who make items you disagree with, no sending hate letters to Valve about the items that they choose to add, and do remember that TF2 is for everyone. It's not just for one particular part of the community. So please leave your opinions below. Like I said, you can add me on Steam if you'd like. I hope to continue this discussion again. See you next time.